Welcome to CBT News with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hello everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick with CBT News. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. As low inventory and chip shortages stick around, should dealers cut back or double down in their advertising spend? On today's show, we're pleased to welcome back Bob Lanham, who's Facebook's head of retail automotive, and John Fitzpatrick, co-founder and CEO of Force Marketing, to give us their perspective on the most effective strategy moving forward. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on CBT News.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Jim, as always. Thank you. John,
Sure.
Great to see you.
Same here. Good seeing you guys.
Good. So, Bob, I'm going to start with you. There is really so much up in the air out there, and dealers are just kind of scratching their heads saying, should I be spending right now? Is it a waste of money because I don't have the inventory that I'd like to have right now? However, it's coupled at a time when there's a boatload of buyers out there. So, I've spoken to, as you know, I speak to a lot of dealers here at CBT News, and some say, no, we're all in. We're not taking our foot off the marketing accelerator, while others say, those guys are crazy. Why spend that money right now? So I'm interested to hear your perspective, because as head of automotive for Facebook, which is obviously such an incredible platform, what say you on this topic?
Yeah, we get a purview into quite a bit as it relates to what dealers are thinking. And you just outlined the two mindsets that we also see, which is, man, it somewhat feels like a recession. So should I be thinking about holding back on marketing? And recession equaling no inventory, I guess, right? Not necessarily an economic recession.
Right.
Where others are saying, and you use the term, interestingly, is should I double down on marketing?
Yeah.
Should I go all in? Because many know that research states in a down economy, those brands that tend to double down, and we can discuss what double down means, but those brands that tend to advertise tend to build market share, more importantly, brand equity, which then builds market share,
right.
When times come back. So what you just outlined is exactly what we see as well.
Yeah, it's crazy out there. And a lot of the dealers that I speak to just feel as though they're only going to do one segment, whether it be social or whether it be TV buys that they're doing for branding or what have you. And it's just really interesting to see that there's a whole, different spectrum out there of what dealers are doing. John, what can you lend to this? What are you seeing, and what are you telling your clients to do right now?
Well, like we were telling them in a different environment, leaning into how effective your first party data can be is always a good strategy in our opinion, whether you've got a 60-day supply or a 6-day supply. And Facebook has done a fantastic job of allowing us to utilize their media platform at scale with really fine tuning the data piece and allowing us to utilize the access that we have, at least at Force, to first party data and other partners in the space into their system to really have a really good conversation, a personalized conversation, with the folks that they've done business with before. And, as we think about, being inventory challenged, there's a couple of different ways we believe you could still communicate with your marketplace. One is in bringing them in and knowing that it's a good place to service their car and buy parts and accessories. That's a great profit center for dealers. So we're leaning in that area. Vehicle acquisition, as you know, Jim, and is a big opportunity for dealers. It's a lot less expensive to buy directly from the consumer than to go through the process of an auction or other routes. And both of those lend well to a good conversation with a client when the timing might be right, and maybe they can put their name on the list and buy right off the truck. And so that's another sort of third area that we've leaned into, which is sort of pre-ordering right off the truck with a lot of our conversations that we're having with our dealers that they can have in their hyper-local marketplaces.
Sure. That in fact, you just brought up a great point, John, about the fact that to acquire vehicles, used vehicles from consumers. Have you seen that, Bob, where Facebook could be an incredible platform to do just that, connect with past customers to say, hey, maybe your spouse is working from home and you don't need that second or third car. Maybe your child is not going to college because they're working virtually or remotely or what have you. It would seem to me that Facebook would be a good platform. John brings up a good point on that.
It is, or at least, we believe it is. And I believe it is. We do have a nice property called Marketplace, which I know many of our dealers use. Plus, we've got that signal that identifies those who are selling an automobile or looking to buy an automobile. But I love what John just outlined. And I want to go back to your comment, Jim, about should dealers double down? Because I actually heard that the other day when I was talking to a dealer one-on-one. And I said, well, what does double down mean? Does that mean double the spend?
That's right.
Or does it just mean like double specific initiatives that might be very efficient, right?
Sure.
And John went into some very efficient tactics. First party data is a very efficient play with us in terms of cost. Right, targeting specific interests or people that have specific behaviors can be very, very efficient. So doubling down, just to be clear, doesn't necessarily mean to those GMs that are listening, I don't have double the expense or double the money to go down. I want to keep that to the bottom line because my numbers are looking so good. It essentially means double down on those tactics that might not necessarily be expensive or costly, but double down on those tactics that work.
Yeah, for sure. And then that's a good point, because we don't mean, if you were spending $500 a car, now spend $1,000. That's not it. But double down in the sense that you're hanging in with your marketing, your advertising, because one thing we do know is that buyers are out there. And John, you touched on something earlier, and that was order your vehicles. I've been in the business, as you know, since the early 80s. And I'm really aging myself right now. But that being said, we used to sell cars off of a list, whether it be Hondas or Toyotas, or a lot of the imports came in that way. Volkswagen came in that way. You never had I shouldn't say never, but you often didn't have the benefit of the inventory sitting on the showroom floor or on the lot. You literally sold off of an inventory list to say we're going to get this many Accords in, and they're sold before they ever hit the lot. And, I see some of that happening right now where somebody says, I want that F-150 or I want that, Toyota, vehicle. And you go to the dealer now and they say, oh, that's going to be coming in the 15th of next month. Did you want to put a deposit on it? And is that car, reserve that vehicle? And that's not a terrible thing. I mean, that's, if we can show factories right now that we can sell cars off of the list, then maybe we don't need a 7-month supply of vehicles sitting on our lot in a post-COVID environment or post-COVID world. And it's just not a terrible thing. And I think for dealers that are out there, there are still buyers out there. There are customers that you could advertise a new vehicle, order yours today or what have you. And guess what? They come in on the new vehicle, and what often happens? They drive out in a late model pre-owned vehicle. Happens all the time. So that could also help you in your used car sales as well. But talk to me a little bit about that, Bob. Have you seen some other retailers out there doing that, where they're pushing the order your vehicle today?
I'm really interested to see what the build to order philosophy and or the way we're going to be buying and selling cars now changes marketing, right? Changes the customer experience. Yeah. I'm not sure we're there yet because I've heard many dealers say there's not even any vehicles in my allotment to pre-sell because the OEMs have pulled back.
Good point.
But when Ford announced it about a month or so ago, I believe, the first thing that popped in my head is, man, like, what then becomes the differentiator? Because it used to be, right, like, who's going to sell it and give up their incentives to sell the car to get the check mark? Well, now if we have specific allotments to sell and pre-sell, does that change the customer experience? Hopefully for the better. Yeah. I hope it does. Or does it change marketing wise? Does it now force more of a brand message than a VIN specific message? I don't know. Like, I don't know yet, but it's going to be, first of all, it's going to be fun to be a part of it because first, I didn't know we had cars in the 80s, so it's fantastic that you sold cars in the 80s. Second, I get to be a part of something here different, which is a whole new philosophy of selling cars.
Okay, it's the last time Bob is on. Thank you.
And goodbye, Bob. I love it. He came out swinging.
No, the reason I bring that up is because that's the way we sold them in the early 80s. And for you old-time sales dealers out there, you know what I'm talking about, where you never had the benefit. You had one on the showroom floor. Nobody was to sell it so that you could at least show a particular car. but we didn't have the benefit in many cases of these, huge inventories of vehicles at the time. So it's the only reason I bring that up is that it can be done. And it was funny because when the car haulers would pull up, and that's how we still get cars to dealerships, every single car would be sold already, and people would be on their phone, okay, it just got here, come out over and pick your car up today. So it was interesting.
Before John weighs in, it would be really interesting to look at CSI scores then to the middle to then what will they be in the future, or obviously start monitoring in the future. I do believe, and I guess it's more of a hope, that it will garner a more positive sales experience.
Yeah,
at least I hope.
It could very well be the case for sure, especially when you don't have all of these dealers running around going, I'm going to give you 1,000, I'm going to give you 1,200, I'm going to give you 1,400, I'm going to give you 1,600, I'm going to give you $2,000 off. I mean, it's like an auction right now with consumers, and it's not fun for consumers, and they'll all tell you that. And it's what built CarMax, right? Wasn't the price, wasn't the car, it was the experience, the one price structure that says this vehicle is this much money, no matter who comes in, and no matter how slick a negotiator they are. This is what we're selling it for, like it or not, but this is what we're doing. And then, of course, Vroom and Carvana picked up on that, and now they're delivered right to your front door under a one-price structure. So, and we are seeing more dealers move to that. I speak to them every week that have said, no, this is, through COVID, this is definitely a direction that we're going to go. So it will be interesting to see how that goes. Have you seen some of that, John, from your perspective?
Well, I think the supply demand's doing that. I mean, look, we're in the car business, been in car business my whole life, and certainly running Force for the last 15 years. And one of my closest friends is a car dealer who I reached out to here in Atlanta, and our trade was up and we needed a new vehicle, and my price was on the sticker. It was full MSRP. Right. And he's like, John, I love you, I mean it, but I only have two.
Yeah.
So what do you want me to do here? And so that's just where we are now. He helped out in the trade, and we did all these other angles that you could help and give me a deal. But it pre 2021 absolutely wasn't a deal. You would never think to go in and buy an expensive SUV and pay full sticker and be happy to do so. That's right. Because you just got it.
That's right.
Where the next guy now can't get it. That was one of two on the lot.
That's right.
So, it's a very, very unique scenario. One thing that it is teaching us, not only did I pay full MSRP, I waited 4 months to get it.
Wow.
And so I think one thing we are learning about consumers when we think about moving to this buy it off the truck scenario or something like that, is they are willing to wait for what they want, and they are willing to pay for what they want. We've been talking about this for a long time with that's why it's important to showcase your brand promise.
That's right.
Showcase all of the other elements, why it makes sense to do business with your dealership group than the next guy that doesn't have to do with the price. Because so often in all of our studies, and JD Power's done this and everybody's ran studies, Facebook, surely is one of them, Google, it's almost never about price.
Yeah.
It's about all of the other things that are important in the customer experience. And COVID is teaching us this.
That's right.
In real time.
That's right.
And we're seeing, more profitability from the dealer's standpoint than ever before. It's going to be interesting, to Bob's point, how this unthaws and what the new normal truly does look like. One thing I want to ask Bob about, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it yet, but I believe that there is an untapped world in the Facebook platform as a connection to a vast audience that can be broken out and segmented in many different ways, if you're particularly looking to grow your fixed ops business. And without having prior conversation with Bob, I'd love to hear Bob's thoughts on if it truly is an untapped area, a white space, if you will, for dealers. Our data seemingly suggesting it so. This isn't a loaded gun. I don't have a fully baked answer on this, but I'd love to hear his thoughts in and around fixed ops as an opportunity in Facebook for a franchise dealer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's untapped for many, but not untapped for all. So what do I mean by that? Your more progressive dealers that understand how marketing and media works have been utilizing fixed ops strategies on our platform. And how have they been utilizing it? John, you said it right from the start, which is utilizing first party data on our platform, right? Every dealer through their DMS or CRM knows exactly who they sold to, what they sold to that person and when, right? And then you can map your maintenance schedules or your parts and accessories against that. I used to tell this joke when I was able to travel and get in front of meetings. I own a Jeep Wrangler, right? And as everybody knows, the second you buy a Wrangler, by Wrangler law, you have to spend minimum $1,000 to accessorize it, right? Well, I would say to the dealers, anybody want to guess where I bought my accessories? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, my parts manager. It's like, you kidding me? Like Amazon. I didn't even know you sold that stuff.
Yeah.
But yet you know exactly what you sold to me and when, and you easily could have delivered me advertising. So you nailed it from the beginning with first party data, just utilizing what you have to market against.
That's right. And if done properly, time of sale, and you were walked through that accessory department, they could have put it in the financing. So now it's just a couple of bucks a month more, and you're tricking the whole vehicle out. And you're right. During times like this, dealers are getting much more efficient and making sure that those salespeople do take those Wrangler customers, through the boutique or the parts department and say, hey, now's the time, because if we can just add it right to the vehicle, here's what we'd recommend you add to it. This is what most people have added to their Wrangler. They find it very useful. They can pop it right in the financing, right?
And John said something earlier that I think the industry truly needs to embrace and understand and then act against it, which is it has been proven that people are willing to pay a premium for cars. Yeah. Like it's undeniable, right? I mean, margins are through the roof. We're buying for sticker. We're buying off of bump stickers. Who knows? And they're not even bumping them up anymore. It's just and we're paying it.
That's right.
Right. And we're paying it.
Yeah.
So I hope both the OEM and the dealer looks at that and says, man, I don't need to put my new inventory in an auction every month, because that's exactly the process. And it's a great analogy, by maybe incentivizing all of these dealers to XYZ. Maybe we take that money and incentivize it for the customer experience or the online platforms or the marketing, right? We know that fixed ops is by far the number one loyalty strategy for a dealership, right? I believe the stat is if you can get them into the back of your store for the first oil change, and then 2 oil changes thereafter, you have a 5-time more likely chance to resell them a car.
That's right.
Like, why are we not putting more money back there? And it's very efficient. So let's do it.
There's no question about it. Go ahead, John.
So Bob, that's what I meant by untapped. Not that they're not doing it at all. I don't know that they're investing enough in that category. And so right now we as an industry has become so VIN specific, and then we lost all our VINs and we're like, now what do we do? Well, hold on a second. For far too long, we've been underinvesting significantly in the loyalty rate of our customer, communicating with them while they have their vehicle. Here are the other needs for it. And those all fit in the fixed ops. If you strengthen the fixed ops conversation, you strengthen the new car loyalty rate conversation. The OEMs have known this forever. That's how all the president's clubs are built, right? You can't just have 102% of objective. You also have to make sure that your CSI scores are right, your fixed ops penetration is right, so on and so forth. And I think right now, as we're thinking about how to influence the flow of whatever marketing dollars are up for grabs, it's our belief that focusing on the fixed ops, focusing then on the loyalty and the overall life cycle communication of the client while inventory is suppressed is a winning strategy. And we've just, we've seen it, in the proof in the clients that have, said, all right, rather than maybe pause my spend altogether, let's maybe pause a portion of it that was very much tied to VIN specific advertising, but let's refocus the messaging, the content, and the goals of the dollars that we're putting to play. Are you seeing the same thing?
I brought up this concept and I was very humble about it in the sense of I've never been a dealer principal. I've never been a GM. So I'm speaking out of turn in the sense of how we run a store. But I've said a number of times, here, we can't look at our advertising and marketing in a silo, right? We've got to look at it holistically. It works together. But why do we do that within the store? Like, why is the service department on a completely separate P&L than the sales department, the sales department separate the part and accessories? And the second The second the retailers start to understand lifetime value,
Right.
right? What is the lifetime? I get 100% of my service out of car. I probably have one of the highest lifetime values out of anyone out there, right? So why wouldn't you want to treat me differently or market to me differently, knowing that you probably have a fairly high margin customer that is willing to come into your store and maybe be a little bit different than your average customer? So I hope in the near future, you're going to start to hear the term lifetime value become a bigger role in how we measure success, not only for advertising and marketing, but hopefully within the store as well.
Sure. John, you I know you work with a number of the publicly traded auto groups out there. I know that dealers are always looking to them to say, well, what are the big guys doing? How do they handle it during times like these? And they're all across the board. Their stocks are up, their profits are up, their expenses are down. What have you found? What have they talked to you about, to saying, without mentioning any specific publicly traded companies that you work with? I wouldn't ask you to do that. But what's the trend out there? Do they have their foot on the marketing accelerator, or what are they doing?
By and large, they're not decreasing the marketing budget at the levels we're seeing a smaller group. That is definitely the case. There is a rearrange of dollars. But here, I coming into this meeting, I had to do a little research, and while our overall, we work with about 1,200 dealership rooftops across our family of brands. This includes GSM, which is a fixed ops focused marketing company, as well as Force Marketing, We Drive Auto, and all based off of our Helix technology platform. Of those 1,200 rooftops, our overall ad spend is down this year about 10%.
Okay.
However, year over year, our Facebook advertising spend is up 91%.
Wow.
Now, we don't ever suggest to spend money that you can't measure and that doesn't have a return on investment. Mm-hmm. And while vanity metrics are very important and they're alive and well in our platform, cost per unit sold and cost per unit service, as fine-tuned as we can possibly get, is the most important. And so to be up 91% Facebook as a channel across omni-channel, where we're in Google, we're in streaming media, we're in a bunch of other categories, mail, email, to be up 91% year over year. You might say, well, year over year, that was during really the heart of COVID. Okay, we're up 40% in Facebook spend, our 1,200 clients. We're up 40% since Q1 of this year. So what that tells me, because we have a infrastructure of clients that are measuring every dollar and they want to see the effectiveness of it, that tells me that Facebook works. That tells me that the audience and that the first party data that can connect to that audience works. And it felt, I was sort of taken aback by those numbers, quite honestly. When I dove into it, so I was like, I've got to share this. While we're not doubling down, while we're at 10% less in overall spend on the year, by the way, in the last quarter, we're probably down closer to 25%, just because the inventory hasn't been there. But, measure that out across the year, it's down about 10.
Sure.
To have that channel be up that significantly, I think is extremely telling on where the bang for the buck is.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, John just teed you up a nice softball there, Bob. Why don't you? What's your response to that?
I get nothing from this, by the way, other than it's just the facts. It's just the facts.
First, thank you for that. But it goes back to the doubling down, right? And what that means. It doesn't necessarily mean I need to double down my spend to try to maybe double sales or even bring sales up 10%. I heard a comment the other day, dealers are the best at spending more money to get negative ROI simply because they just think they need to spend to get more. But what you just said was, you doubled down on a platform, or your dealers doubled down on the platform, or even, tripled or quadrupled down on the platform. And that doesn't necessarily mean it costs them more. Right? Because every media platform has a different cost. And fortunately, I get to represent a platform that is very efficient at what it does, especially when it's matched to ROI. So thank you for that.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you. Bob Lanham, head of automotive retail for Facebook. It's always a pleasure having you on. Of course, John Fitzpatrick, You're a pretty decent guy too. Co-founder and CEO of Force Marketing, as I mentioned before, father of my amazing grandkids. So thanks for that.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching CBT News, the voice of the retail automotive industry. Fitzpatrick, Pash, Kane, Lewis, Greenfield, Reed, Dawson, Lopes, Rice. The best lineup in retail automotive. CBTnews.com. Subscribe today.